Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the AceMind Week 10 Slate breakdown. Just going to be me today. Jung is feeling a little under the weather. That's fine. We have got a 10-game slate to talk about this week. Not as interesting as some of the slates past, certainly not the massive no-buy slate we had last week. But nonetheless, we're going to dive into it. A couple good spots here that we're going to want to talk about as far as implied team totals and game environments. Without further ado, let's go ahead and dig into it. We'll just go down a list here, left to right, starting with the Vikings going to Duval to play the Jacksonville Jaguars. Few injury notes for this game. Trevor Lawrence not going to play. We will be getting Macaroni Jones under center for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Not a great look here for the Jags going up against the Brian Flores defense that has looked very good this year. And the Jacksonville Jags offense, which has not performed well. I don't really expect Mac Jones to be that big of an upgrade over Trevor Lawrence, although Trevor Lawrence has been very bad this year. Right now, the Vikings are ranking first in DVOA by a significant margin, holding teams to not very many touchdowns and not very many yards, and the second fewest points, really, in the league. On the Vikings offensive side, the Vikings are pretty low in pace of play, not running very many plays, but the plays that they are running are fairly pass-heavy. They're ranking fourth in pass rate over expectation. But just due to the game scripts they've been in for most games this season where they're leading by a ton, Sam Darnold has not seen very many pass attempts, and he hasn't eclipsed more than mid-30s in any game so far this season. However, the offense, Sam Darnold, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and TJ Hawkinson, and Aaron Jones are efficient enough that they've been getting the job done DK points-wise through efficiency. Justin Jefferson, he has scored quite a few times this year, going over 20 DraftKings points in a game, but he's doing it on limited number of targets just due to the game script that the Minnesota Vikings find themselves in. And that sort of leads us to Aaron Jones, who has sort of emerged as a workhorse in the backfield for this team, playing a good majority of snaps, like 70+% of the snaps on offense. And when they get these big leads in the games, they tend to rely on him to burn out the clock, extend drives, and keep the other team off the field. He's coming in with opportunity counts of mid-20s. So I expect to see a good amount of Aaron Jones here, even if the Vikings get up early in the game through some big plays, whether it's Addison, Hawkinson, or Jefferson. We should see towards the third and fourth quarter that Aaron Jones takes over and gets a lot of the workload out of the back. Jags defense so far this season has been okay against the run, middle of the field against the run. I don't really expect that to affect Aaron Jones too much, but they are dead last in the league against the pass in DVOA. So that sets up really well for Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and TJ Hawkinson. Jags are playing a lot of man coverage, especially with their defense healthy, and that does sort of lead towards a Justin Jefferson game. The only issue there is, like I said before, with the game script where Vikings aren't passing a lot just due to game script, and they aren't running a lot of plays per game. They're pretty slow. So I think my interest in this game is sort of game stack only, where I'm playing Sam Darnold plus Justin Jefferson and Addison or Hawkinson and Aaron Jones. Even the defense, I think, is fine in these stacks. I'm not too interested in running it back with anybody from the Jags. If I would, maybe Brian Thomas Jr., maybe Parker Washington, for a couple of reasons. So one, the Jacksonville backfield is such a mess right now with a three-way timeshare between ETN, Bigsby, and the Ernest Johnson. None of them are really great options to begin with. They're sharing time, and then they go and face a Minnesota secondary that is really good at stopping the run and a little bit more vulnerable to the pass. And given the game script here for the Jags, they're going to have to be dropping back and throwing the ball a ton. So it takes me off. At the very least, it takes me off of somebody like Travis Etienne. I'm looking more for pass catching backs and players who are running short routes out of the backfield. And I do like the Vikings defense here as well. just due to their performance so far this season. They're great at getting pressure on the quarterback, so tons of points to be had through sacks. Jacksonville's going to be dropping back a ton and throwing the ball, leaving them susceptible to interceptions and defensive touchdowns, the whole 9 yards there. So, yeah, expected game script for me here is that the Vikings just get out to a big lead pretty early. Whether it's on the ground or through the air, not sure, but once they do, they're probably going to get pretty conservative, run the ball a lot, maintain time of possession, control the clock. Yeah, so for the most part here, my interest in this is as a game stack for the Vikings. I wouldn't really want to play Justin Jefferson as a one-off because if he's hitting the ceiling, it's likely Sam Darnold is as well. Aaron Jones, I think, is probably fine as a one-off, just betting on the production for this team to go solely through the ground and not much through the air, with the Vikings controlling the game for the most part. Run backs, if you want to play somebody from Jacksonville, I'd probably just lean towards a salary saver like Parker Washington. Maybe Brian Thomas Jr., but he's pretty expensive and not really sure how he's going to perform against the Vikings secondary. And with Mac Jones under center, I don't foresee a ton of offensive production for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Okie doke. Heading into another large spread game, we have the Eagles traveling to Jerry World to play the Cowboys, who have been nothing short of disastrous on the season. Not good on offense, not good on defense. Let's jump into it. Saquon Barkley last week, again with one of the most elite roles for a running back in the league, busted off 35 DK points, tons of rushing yards, tons of receiving work, crazy backwards hurdle. I mean, you name it, he'll do it. He's obviously a great play this week, but going to garner ownership doing so. So that being said, I think the Eagles here are in a spot to put up a ton of points and a ton of points early. I think the -7 spread's honestly a little too tight. Something to note, the Eagles, since going on their bye and coming back, are averaging way more points and yards per game than they were earlier. That's sort of, I guess, a twofold there. So like one of them is obviously their offense is healthy now with A.J. Brown back, not dealing with injuries. And then like a general switch in their offensive scheme. So they've been undefeated since their bye. They look really good. Their offense is humming. They're putting up a ton of points and a ton of yards per game. And now they go and face a Cowboys defense who has been absolutely depleted, ranking nearly dead last in DVOA against the run and the pass. They've got injuries on defense. They've got issues stopping the run with yards after first contact. They have trouble with big plays. All in all, it sets up for a really good spot for Hurts, Barkley, and Brown stacks with secondary interest in Devonta Smith and Dallas Goedert. CeeDee Lamb, well, I guess we should talk about the Cowboys. No Dakary Prescott this week, dealing with a hamstring injury, so they'll be putting in Cooper Rush under center. I guess he's garnering a bit of ownership this week. I sort of get it as a pay down spot, but for me, I don't think you can touch this Cowboys offense. So CeeDee Lamb likely to play this week, but he is dealing with some sort of lingering issue. Full practice today, so definitely going to play, but to what extent, I'm not sure. And then the other thing to consider is that Cooper Rush is going to be getting swarmed on offense, and I sort of expect the Cowboys to attack sort of intermediary shorter routes in the middle of the field. So looking at guys like Jake Ferguson and Rico Dowdle out of the backfield. So that sort of limits my interest on CeeDee Lamb and in the Cowboys in general. I'm not super interested. Much like last game, I think the Eagles are a team you can stack and not have to worry about bringing somebody back. No reason to force that. If you get somebody, that's fine. I think it's okay, but it's not something that I would be forcing into my lineups. You could see, sort of in weeks past, this is with Dak Prescott under center, but the Cowboys are sort of getting garbage time fourth quarter points. So, I could certainly see that where the Eagles are beating the brakes off the Cowboys through three quarters and then goes into the fourth, and the Eagles are just kind of content letting the Cowboys waste time, drive the field, and score some points. So definitely I like Rico Dowdle, Jake Ferguson. Those are guys that I kind of look to for garbage time points, or as a general rule, I think they're going to be schemed more in the offense for Cooper Rush. Saquon Barkley here is great workload, over 20 attempts in many games, 20 opportunities through the ground and the air. Eagles are sort of getting run heavy, building leads, and I expect them to have one here. So they're going to be running the ball a lot. So Saquon Barkley definitely in play as one of the best running back plays on the slate. Any other notes from this game? Yeah, not really many notes here. I think Jalen Hurts plus Saquon Barkley is an interesting stack, just due to pricing on the slate. A.J. Brown's really expensive, and there are paths to a ceiling here for sure, no doubt about it. But if you play Hurts and Barkley, you're getting pretty much 100% touchdown equity for the team. And, a great running back playing Saquon Barkley, and it's a lot of salary. So there's a pivot to be made there if you want to do sort of a contrarian stack. I like Hurts plus Barkley. Totally fine there. Moving on to Falcons at the Saints. Pretty tighter spread here and a fairly good total. We've got a divisional game here between the Falcons and the Saints. Both of these teams are looking to win, although one team is more likely to win than another here. So Falcons have looked pretty good throughout their last 6 games, winning 5 of the 6. Kirk Cousins putting up a lot of phenomenal scores. The running game between Bijan, Algier, and their running game is looking better. Saints, on the other hand, have started the season very well, super hot, and then lost their last 7 straight. Fired head coach Dennis Allen. So a lot of turmoil going on through that team. Some key injuries to watch here. We've got Chris Olave likely to be out, missing for the Saints. They traded Marshawn Lattimore to the Commanders, I believe. And then on the Falcons side, London and Pitts were limited in practice Thursday, but they should be good to go for Friday. No worries there. Or for Sunday, no worries there. The Saints are going to be featuring a ton of Alvin Kamara and a ton of Taysom Hill. For me, those are it's funny that a tight end and a running back are the top 2 receiving options on the team, but that is the state of the Saints offense at the moment. The Saints are 31st in run DVOA and 28th in pressure rate, so that sets up really well for the Falcons running game for both Algier and Bijan Robinson, and it also gives Kirk Cousins time in the pocket to find receivers downfield and in general make cleaner throws. So definitely like the Falcons side of the ball here. It's the last time these guys played, obviously a bit different scenario, but tons of points are scored. And I think there's another scenario here where they're playing in a dome. Just creates a good setup for the Falcons here. Not much else to talk about here for me. I think there's a few options to consider for a Kirk Cousins stack. Cousins plus Bijan plus London, Cousins plus Bijan plus Kyle Pitts. I like it all. And then if you want to run back Alvin Kamara or Taysom Hill, I think they're fine as well. Kamara should rack up a ton of PPR points, and in general is going to be owned, but it's hard to deny his upside here for receptions in this game. Moving on to the Niners traveling to the Bucs to play. 15.5 point total. I expect a lot of ownership to go here. 49ers are getting CMC back this week, which is huge for their offense. Opens up the playbook for them. And in general, the Bucs run defense hasn't been what it was in years past. They've got Vita Vea dealing with injuries. And in general, they've been more susceptible on the ground this year than they have in years past. So a ton of scoring opportunities for the Niners here on offense. The Bucs are 5th in both points scored and points allowed, sort of meaning that their defense is allowing teams to score a ton. And as a result, they have to drop back a ton. We've seen Baker Mayfield throw 30, 40, 50 passes a game in many scenarios. And honestly, he's doing fairly well for it given the injuries to his offense. No Mike Williams, probably won't play until after their bye week. And obviously Chris Godwin out for the season with his injury. Although, with all that being said, Baker Mayfield has still put up fantasy-worthy points. And his offense, while not having a ton of studs, going through guys like Sterling Shepard, Raheem Jarrett, Trey Palmer, Ryan Miller, it's still able to function at a rate where they are staying in games. It's a bit different here against the Niners. It's a better defense than they faced in the past. However, I do think that there are opportunities on both sides of the ball here for playing. I love a game stack in this situation. Sort of going with the whole points scored and points allowed for the Bucs. They are ranked third in pass rate over expectations, mostly due to game script. Their defense is giving up a ton of points, and as a result, Baker's having to drop back a ton, throw the ball, try to come back and claw back a victory. Is McMillan playing? McMillan might be out. So, receiving core for the Bucs is very thin, not very easy to predict. There was involving their running backs more as receivers too. So definitely be on the lookout for stacking partners and Rachaad White and Bucky Irving. Even against the 49ers, I think their prices are fine enough where they split a workload, but play one and hope that he gets the work, gets the touchdown, gets the receptions. And in general, on the 49ers side, I love Purdy stacks this week. The Bucs quarterback points allowed are some of the highest in the league so far. A lot of quarterbacks are finding their best games to be against the Bucs. Many instances where quarterbacks are scoring, their highest or their second or third highest points of the season against the Buccaneers. Kate Otten as well on the Bucs side, I think. Obviously, they're number one receiving option, so I think he's fine even against a Niners, linebacker core that is fairly scary to go up against. I still think that he's the first look on many plays, and his volume is just going to be solidified in this offense where there's really no good receiving option behind him. Well, and if there is, the volume and snap rate's not, enough to rely on. Quick note on Tampa's defense. They are sort of middle in the field against receivers, but give up a lot of points to the tight end. So I like George Kittle here as a stacking option with Brock Purdy, maybe running a Brock plus CMC plus Kittle. It's a great way to do. And then you could run back with Raheem Jarrett, Sterling Shepard. I even think like the secondary options in Juwan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall on the Niners are interesting. There's going to be a lot of ownership coming to this game, so finding a unique way to stack it is a way to sort of gain access to the ceiling that this game provides without playing it the same way everybody else is. So definitely look, if you're playing this game, I don't even mind stacking, a thin stack for Baker Mayfield and saving money that way and using that to spend up on players like McCaffrey, Kittle, even Debo. Just in general, I'm going to have a ton of this game and both sides of the ball, and I want to get a lot of unique combinations here. Moving on to the Bills playing at Indianapolis. We have a 47.5 game total with a -4 spread. Colts dealing with some injuries. They will have no Pittman. The Bills dealing with no Keon Coleman. And Amari Cooper was questionable, but I believe he will play. His role has sort of increased here with the Bills. And with the absence of Keon Coleman, there might be, more of a path for him to get more targets his way, although it's still fairly spread out between him, Shakir, Kincaid. Things to sort of note, we've talked about this in the past with the Bills offense. They aren't playing the same ball that they were last year, and it's similar for Kansas City too, where they aren't looking to score a ton of points and drive down the field fast and just put a hurt on teams. They're taking a more conservative approach. They're sustaining drives. They're dragging out time of possession. Their plays are a bit slower, lower play count per game. And this has sort of led to not as much of a ceiling for Josh Allen and his receivers. A little bit more work for the running backs here between James Cook, being backed up by Ty Johnson and Ray Davis. James Cook usage so far this season has not been that great. Still has a majority, I believe, of the workload, but not by much. Slight majority for him, and then the rest is split between Ray Davis and Ty Johnson. On the other side of the ball, we got Joe Flacco under center, who's looked a lot better than Anthony Richardson has for the Colts this year, although his air yards and downfield rate is not as high as Richardson, but that being said, Richardson couldn't get the ball on target to begin with, so I don't really count that as a negative for him because he's actually able to get the ball to his receivers. And we also have Jonathan Taylor here looking to be healthy, and when he is healthy, he's got a great workload, both rushing and receiving. His opportunity share is elite in the backfield. And I think going to Joe Flacco here is fine in this game. Probably going to be throwing the ball a lot. I like pairing him with Josh Downs. He seems to be his favorite target so far. He's garnering over a 20% target rate and over a 30% target per route run rate when Flacco starts as compared to Richardson. So stacking Flacco with Downs I think is fine. I think playing Jonathan Taylor is fine. And then on the Bills side of the ball, I like a lot of pieces. I like Josh Allen. I like Shakir. I like Kincaid. I like Cooper. And then you can even have some cheaper guys like Curtis Samuel coming into a role where injuries are opening up more opportunity for them. For the most part, likely game script here is that the Bills get out ahead and they're trying to control drives and sustain them through the ground game with Joe Flacco playing from behind, throwing the ball a bit more and getting looks to Josh Down. A little bit of Taylor out of the backfield, although not much. Adonai Mitchell's probably not a bad shot either at 3,400. Cheap guy with tons of upside. I like him in tournaments as well. Next, we got Jets at Cardinals. Tight spread here, and honestly, a fairly good total. The Jets, since acquiring Devontae Adams and trading away Mike Williams, have sort of concentrated their offense, and that's sort of been aided with the addition of Allen Lazard to the injured reserve. So now on the offense, you've got a fairly concentrated offense between Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams, and a bit of Tyler Conklin, although not much. So it's kind of a weird spot where I don't hate playing the Jets. Their offense has looked better with Devontae Adams on the field. You saw it against the Texans last week. Rodgers went for 3 touchdowns, over 200 yards. His completion rate was good. And against the Cardinals here, I think he could see a similar performance. So I like the Rodgers stacks here, whether it's with Breece Hall out of the backfield. Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams, and Tyler Conklin are all viable stacking partners in tournaments. And then on the other side of the ball, we've got the Cardinals, who haven't looked very good. We saw last week the Jets pass rush. The pass rush looked really good against the Texans, getting tons of sacks. I think they got like 6, 7, 8 sacks last week against the Texans. And I kind of expect them to get some pressure on Kyler here as well, which may mean more targets for Trey McBride and James McConnor in the short routes out of the backfield or over the middle of the field. Not as interested in Marvin Harrison and Michael Wilson, who I've been playing them a ton this season, and it just hasn't come to fruition for them and Kyler Murray. With the addition of Devontae Adams as well, he's sort of taken over that middle of the field role from Garrett Wilson. So now Devontae Adams is sort of that shorter A-dot guy in the middle of the field, and Garrett Wilson is stretching the field a bit more. So definitely upside for both of them, whether it's PPR or yardage. I like both of them. I like Breece Hall as well here. Cardinals have a pretty low blitz rate, not a ton of pressure on the quarterback. I could see more routes for him out of the backfield. A lot of opportunities for him on the offense. Can we get an MTV Cribs tour of the guitars after we shred this slate? Yeah. I mean, you can see it. Where is it back here? Got my electric, acoustic, and then a bass guitar. Good stuff. Love jamming. Any other things to note here? Leave the good comments to FK. Yeah, he's the jokester. Not much else to talk about here. Jets' schedule the rest of the season honestly looks pretty good for them. They could make a run, for the playoff race, maybe. Depends on how they perform this game. But if they look as good as they did against the Texans, the offense is humming a bit more, the defense is getting pressure. Their schedule looks pretty good so far the rest of the season, so might be playing them in weeks to come. Next game we're talking about is the Steelers at the Commanders. We have a 45 game total with a -2.5 spread. for the Commanders. Steelers acquired Mike Williams from the Jets, and they are getting Cordell Patterson to return. Commanders get Marshawn Lattimore, like we talked about earlier, from the Saints. Steelers defense has looked pretty good so far this season. They rank really well in pressure rate and blitz rate, and their red zone defense has been, I think, the league best as far as touchdowns allowed to opponents in the red zone, so holding teams to field goals. Although, that being said, they haven't played a ton of good teams. Jane Daniels might be, contrary to that point. We will have Russ Wilson, obviously under center for the Steelers. And in his starts, he has shown a bit more capability, I'd say, than Justin Fields as far as throwing the ball downfield, getting the ball downfield to guys like Calvin Austin, George Pickens, Van Jefferson. A bit more deep throw rate and air yards per throw. So not a bad look for the Steelers here, honestly. I don't hate it. Najee Harris is looking at over 20 opportunities a game. However, his pass game or lack of pass game usage is sort of a hindrance there. And his red zone usage hasn't been that great. Failure to convert on some short runs. And then also they're looking towards the big guys like George Pickens and Freiermuth on, goal to go short yardage scenarios. Commanders are ranking 30th in yards allowed before contact, and Harris is generating a lot of yards after contact. So still a good matchup for him as far as running backs go. I like playing him. I'll probably have some, but yeah. On the Commander side of the ball, kind of rough. I don't know. It's hard to stack Jane Daniels for a couple reasons. The receiving options are really spread out. It's hard to know who to pair him with. So if I'm probably stacking this game, it's going to be on the Russell Wilson side of the ball, although still not a ton of interest for me. I do like Calvin Austin at 3,500 as like a value play, as a cheapy guy who has a floor of 0, but a pretty high ceiling. 2 games so far this year where he's put up huge scores that at 3,500 are absolutely going to put you in the running to win a GPP. Yeah. Main picks from this game: Russ, Pickens, Najee, little Jane Daniels. Yeah, a little bit of Calvin Austin. Titans at the Chargers, and kind of a stinker of a game. We got a pretty low total and a massive spread here. Talk about it every week, but the game plan here for the Chargers is the same it is every week. They're looking to run the ball, control time of possession, dominate on defense, and win a slow, sluggish game. We will have Will Levis starting for the Titans. No more Mason Rudolph, so I wouldn't really call that an upgrade. Might even call it a downgrade. Don't know, but Will Levis has looked very bad this year so far, throwing a ton of interceptions, sacked a ton. His accuracy is terrible, and now he goes up against the Chargers defense, which is getting a ton of pressure on the quarterback, and in general has looked really good on defense. Titans will get Tyjae Spears back in the backfield, so with Tony Pollard sort of nursing a bit of an injury, I kind of expect them to, relinquish some of the control that Pollard had on the backfield and give Tyjae Spears a bit more looks. And also, given the game script, I do think that they want Tyjae Spears in on the third down plays, a bit more of a passing game role than Pollard. Titans have only scored over 20 points in a game once, and then Chargers on the other side are holding opponents to under 20. In general, this just looks like a game where the Chargers get out to an early lead, maybe a couple touchdowns through the air to McConkey or Quentin Johnston. But from there, they're probably going to run the ball a ton, sustain drives, and just play the game on defense. I do sort of like the Chargers here as like a stack. I could see them putting up a lot of points early. It's very possible against the Tennessee defense. So like a Herbert plus Quentin Johnston plus Josh Palmer or plus Ladd McConkey, or pairing him with J.K. Dobbins, even pairing him with the defense as well, I think is not a terrible stack to play in tournaments. Next game we're looking at is the Broncos and the Chiefs. Another lower total here and a pretty big spread. Chiefs have looked pretty good so far this year. I think Mahomes is fine to go. He did tweak his ankle at the end of the last game we watched him play. But I think he'll be fine. He'll be playing. Chiefs, no Juju this week, obviously. DeAndre Hopkins obviously had a huge game. Was it Monday? Yeah, Monday or Sunday night. Monday night, not sure. But his snap count is increasing. His target share is increasing, and I sort of just expect it to continue to increase. He looks to be a pretty reliable target for Mahomes. It seems like they already have good chemistry, either that or DeAndre Hopkins is just like a freak of nature who catches anything thrown within 10 yards of him. I like him. I don't know if I would play him in this game environment. I don't think it's like a ceiling spot for him. I think his floor is fairly stable in general. Much like the Bills, the Chiefs are sort of playing game management football, running the ball a bit more with Kareem Hunt, who has sort of taken over the backfield here with a lot of opportunities per game. Although his matchup against the Broncos isn't great, the workload is. So fine getting to Kareem Hunt. Passing side on Chiefs, it's still Kelsey number one, seeing averages, I think 9 or 10 targets a game recently at least. And then DeAndre Hopkins is also not a bad shot to pair with Mahomes. I think it's a fine stack if you want to go there. For the Broncos side of the ball, Chiefs D has been really good against the run this year. Don't have much interest in Javonte Williams here. Obviously, the game script for them is going to be pass. So outside of Cortland Sutton, there really aren't any reliable receiving options here. So if I'm playing somebody from the Broncos, probably going to be Cortland Sutton, although not a ton of interest for me to begin with. And then on the Chiefs side of the ball, it's Mahomes, Hunt, Kelsey, Hopkins. Broncos, I know they look good in weeks past, but those are against, lesser defenses. I think against the Chiefs, they're going to have a really hard time getting the ball down the field. And in general, this game's probably going to play slower, lots of running, lots of defense, lots of kickers. Outside of, the KC options and Kelsey, Hunt, Hopkins, I don't think there's a ton of interest for me here in this game. And to wrap it up, we have the Patriots traveling to Chicago to play the Bears after the Bears laid a terrible egg last week. Did not look good on the road. That's probably something to note is that their home and road splits are egregious. I think they've lost every away game so far this season. Pull up my notes here. 4-0 at home and 0-4 on the road. At home, they're averaging, fifth most points in the league, and then 28th most in the league on the road. So incredible home road splits for the Bears. Kind of makes me want to get to them to some capacity here. Tons of love for DeAndre Swift as far as ownership goes, but not as much love for like a Caleb Williams, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, Cole Kmet. I think that's an interesting stack to play this week with a ton of ownership going to DeAndre Swift. Patriots have sort of been teetering this season, either like close games or getting completely blown out. Ramondre Stevenson, I think I have a lot of interest on that side of the ball, as well as Hunter Henry and Demario Douglas. They seem to be preferred targets for Drake May. Outside of those three, I don't think there's really any viable options for the Patriots. So running a stack like a Caleb Williams plus DJ Moore plus Odunze, coming back with Ramondre or Henry or Douglas, I think is kind of interesting here. It's a good way to save salary and then spend up at running back for somebody like CMC, Barkley, or Kamara. DeAndre Swift is still probably fine, but at 20% ownership, it is a bit steeper. And then obviously the Bears defense here is massive chalk at home against Drake May, and I get it. But always got to be careful with chalk defenses. And I think there's a lot of defenses here in good spots too, where you can get off the field there in many cases. So I'm going to go position by position now and sort of give my takes on a good low-owned player. So at quarterback, we've got Purdy, Darnold, and Herbert all coming in at over 10% ownership and they're all in good spots. So no fault there if you want to play them. I'll have tons of them in my lineup. My favorite contrarian player at quarterback is going to be Jalen Hurts at 2% against the Cowboys, who are giving up tons of yards and touchdowns on offense. And it could be the Saquon show, towards the later end of the game or even all game. But at 2%, I think you got to take shots on Jalen Hurts against the Cowboys secondary that's been getting fleeced all year. At running back, we've got Jones, Kamara, Robinson, Connor, all these players above 10%, and these are all great plays. Honestly, it might be hard to find somebody under 10% that I like, but if I am going to somebody under 10, I like Najee at 8%, and I like Ramondre at 5%. I think those are good shouts. Kind of gross, but I also do kind of like EaglesDAL at 4%. I envision that the Cowboys are going to be throwing him the ball a lot in short routes as pressure release valves for Cooper Rush. I would be playing him strictly as like a PPR play and not a bad run back for Philly stacks, but don't like him as a one-off. But I do think that there's upside in EaglesDAL. Tight end, we've got some ownership condensing at the top. Will Dissly as chalk. I get it, he's cheap, but I don't think the game environment's that good for him, and his ceiling is way lower than some of these other players on the slate. Like we've got Kittle, Kelsey, just name a few players who have way higher slate-breaking ceilings than Dissly does. So I think there's easy ways to get off ownership there. Looking down the list, I like TJ Hawkinson at 1% on the Vikings offense going against a Jax defense that gives up tons of yards through the air, and a Vikings team that doesn't run a lot of plays, but when they do, they are passing the ball a lot. Hawk is a good red zone target for them, and at 1%, I'll probably be over the field there. Wide receiver, we do have some chalk up top. No worries about that. Filter back down. London, McConkey, Samuel, and Downs up top. Going lower in the list to look for lower-owned players. There are some good salary savers down here. Raheem Jarrett, Calvin Austin, Ricky Pearsall. I like those a lot as sort of salary savers, contrarian plays. Jordan Addison at 1% seems ridiculous to me. I know like Justin Jefferson's great. Offense sort of likes to run through him, but we've seen games this year where Jordan Addison scores 2 touchdowns and goes for 90 yards. And at 1%, again, like I said about TJ Hawkinson, it's a great spot for them against Jacksonville. Tons of points to go around for the offense, and I will likely be over there at 1.7%. Defense, not much to talk about. We've got Bears chalk. Patriots are chalk too, just due to their price at $2,500. I don't love it. I sort of lean into the home road splits here for the Bears, so I don't think I'll play much of any of the Patriots. And I will play some Bears, but maybe not at a 30% clip. I like the Eagles a lot this week. I like the Chargers a lot this week. And I like the Vikings a lot this week as far as defenses that have opportunity to score points through sacks, through takeaways, and through touchdowns. Yeah, so let's take a look at a sim I ran earlier and sort of kind of show you how you might be able to build a set of 150 lineups for this slate. So the first thing I would probably do is narrow down my quarterback pool. And if I was playing 150 lineups, these are probably the quarterbacks that I would consider for my pool. We'll deal with ownership or exposures later, but Aaron Rodgers, Baker Mayfield, Brock Purdy, Caleb Williams, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, Joe Flacco, a little bit of Herbo, Sam Darnold, and Russell Wilson. Those are likely. Well, also throw Kurt Cobain's in there. I think those are all fine GPP plays. And then from there, what I would do is look at my exposure to them. So we've got 29% Flacco, 17% Purdy, so on and so forth. So I might start tweaking exposures there. I don't want a ton of Flacco. Rodgers, I'd probably limit a bit as well. Just don't want tons of these quarterbacks. So I'd apply that and see where it shakes out. Check back. We got 22% Purdy, 13 Darnold, Hurts. These look a little bit better to me. Yeah, I think that's fine. Then you could go through and start limiting your running back pool. So, like, for example, I probably want to play Braylon Allen. Probably not going to get to, somebody like Jalen Warren or Jeremy McNichols, Ray Davis, Roshan, Tank, ETN, for example. So you could go through and whittle different exposures. Other things you might be able to do as well is limit your primary stack. So if I scroll down through here, we might see something like a Minnesota 1 stack. And if we go look, it's just naked Sam Darnold. That's not a stack that I'd really be wanting to play. Same with like San Francisco 1 and so on. So what I would go through here and do is just uncheck the 1 stacks. So all these 1 stacks I don't want to play. Well, actually for Buffalo, I think a naked Josh Allen's fine. Yeah. Indy, don't want a solo stack. Herbo, no solo stack. Darnold, no solo stack. No Rodgers solo stack. Jalen Hurts, I think, is fine as a solo stack, although in this game environment, I would want him paired with somebody, so I will untick his solo. No Russ solo, no Purdy solo, no Baker solo. Yeah, so I'd apply that and make sure I'm getting actual stacks with my quarterbacks here. And then on defense, let's take a look here. Bears, 37%. I'll probably just limit that a bit, like maybe a quarter of my lineups, and just give more opportunity for other teams to get in there. So yeah, hope you enjoyed the look at the Week 10 slate and a bit at the entry builder tool. Good luck in your contest this week. Be sure to join our Discord, follow us on Twitter, and we will be back next week for Week 11. All righty, see ya.